Right. Well, welcome everyone. We'll get started. If you can hear me and we're reading loud and clear, I know we've got some people who may be trickling in here. Go ahead and, give me a nice little hand raise. As you notice, there's the raise hand function or the agree if you want to put that. Great. This is letting me know that all is well. Catherine, thank you, and Peggy. Okay, good. So that tells me that everything's working okay. Good to hear. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Well, let's jump right in. You're here, and we're here because we're going to talk about project-based learning and literacy, and specifically the Literacy Design Collaborative, and how these two can really meet each other's needs, how they can have a nice synergy, how they complement each other. And we're really going to focus on giving you some specific strategies where we align the essential elements of project-based learning to some of the essential elements of LDC. So I'm going to jump right over and just give a background about myself so that you can understand who we are. I'm Andrew Miller, specifically, and I'm one of the national faculty members for the Buck Institute for Education. So I'm one of those people on the ground going around supporting schools, doing PBL 101 workshops and follow-up coaching and support. And I do a lot of work in literacy, humanities, and technology. And PBL has always been my passion as a former classroom teacher. This is my first year out of the classroom. It's been very, very interesting. Although I teach some online classes now and again, but I've been doing PBL for quite some time, and I'm always, I love to work with teachers to see what they're doing in terms of their PBL projects, but also just, to frankly get some great ideas to perhaps use in my classroom. So collaboration is one of the best things here. And so hopefully we can work together to really collaborate on this LDC work, because it's definitely a great opportunity to meet some needs. So with that, I'll turn it right over to David, and he can give you his background.
Hi, I'm David. I'm the Dean of the National Faculty for the Buck Institute for Education. And very quickly about us, there's a screenshot from our website. We're a nonprofit. We're celebrating our 25th year. We do one thing only, that's project-based learning, and we divide it into three major domains. The first is we do a lot of books. We've written a half dozen of them, and they've been translated into a dozen or so languages. I know we've got somebody from Spain, and the translation of virtually all of our material into Spanish will be completed in about a month. We do academic research, our own, and we curate the research of others, and we post it, and feel free to download it. But 80% of our content we give away. It's under tools on our website, so have at it, take what you want. And then the final thing we do, and that's what I'm in charge of, is professional development. Last year, we trained about 12,000 teachers in face-to-face workshops in the United States and abroad in project-based learning. I always tell people I invented project-based learning. That's not true. It's been around for over a century. I didn't really understand it completely until I left the classroom in Southern California, where I taught for 6 years in a middle school, and moved up to Northern California, where I was introduced to the Buck Institute for Education. I realized I did not invent it, and I learned how to do it effectively because of BIE. And what we're going to do is sort of dive deep, as Andrew said, into the integration of the Literacy Design Collaborative and project-based learning.
Yes, yes. What is a project? And this is always the question that we get all the time when we're working with teachers. A lot of teachers, say, I've been doing project-based learning for a long time. And I would say, yeah, I'm sure that many of us do the elements of projects. And I would love to turn it over to, for a quick collaboration here in the chat and ask you what your definition of a project is, and maybe what your definition of project-based learning is. So I see some are already typing. Please feel free to type in your own ideas about what you think a project is and how it might be different from project-based learning. I think it's important because common language as we move forward when we're talking about project-based learning. And then when we talk about the Literacy and Design Collaborative, it's important that we're all on the same page so that we can really move forward with the common language and the common understanding. So as you are typing in your ideas, much as multiple attendees typing, that's great. Thank you so much for providing your ideas. I'm going to kind of jump into the next slide and draw on some of the things that I'm sure are going to come up. At the Buck Institute, we might say we draw a line in the sand in terms of what we consider to be a really good PBL project. And we talk about the essential elements of project-based learning. And I'm already seeing that many of you are articulating those things. When I'm looking here, I'm seeing authentic project, authentic workplace, real-world connection, instruction for which teachers facilitated and student-led, right? And so with that, you might connect that to the in-depth inquiry component, where it's a mix of both teacher-led instruction and student-led instruction, where students have voice and choice in how they spend their time and how they use their time, how they show their knowledge through authentic projects that I'm seeing you might have articulated here about this authentic piece. And that it's relevant, right? When we talk about the public audience component, right? Yes, I agree that relevancy is a critical component. We know that if the work goes outside into the real world to a public audience, it matters. We know that students will engage more in that work. And yes, it's an investigation process. And so, like I said, inquiry, but as you also said, it's a process. And so through that, we're talking about 21st century skills, the 21st century skills of collaboration, critical thinking, and problem solving, as well as communication, as well as the important content, right? Products are not, as you might call it, kind of flimsy things that don't have real content associated with it. On the contrary, you have very targeted standards that you are teaching and assessing in a project, and you target those and have great assessments that measure student progress. And as Roger said, yeah, there's lots of formative assessment. Thank you. And through that, you have a revision and reflection process where students are thinking about their work, they're planning new goals, they're reflecting on their work and improving their work. Of course, another essential element is this idea that there's a driving question that's student-friendly, that engages students in in-depth inquiry, that has them move forward in that process, that they continually refer to make sure that they're focused and on task for the work. And of course, one of the another essential feature is that the project really creates a need to know. It's not just because Mr. Miller tells you need to know the content, but that the project is engaging and authentic and relevant and real, that it creates a need to learn important skills, both, like as you said, 21st century skills and content, right? And again, so the whole process is the PBL project. It's not just that nice piece at the end. It's not just the dessert. We say, PBL is the main course and not the dessert, right? I'm sure you've heard that, and there's a great article in our tools area that really summarizes that, and I encourage people to go look at that. As David says, that you can go and look for that. So again, it's the main course and not the dessert. We really pride ourselves on that work, that the project is the curriculum instruction. It's all the things we do as teaching, and it's a process and a product-oriented piece. I always say this to teachers when I'm working with them. This is probably one of the most important things to remember from any PBL workshop. So I'm going to turn it over to David, and he's going to talk about, what we already know PBL is really, really good at, and maybe where we could see some areas of, improving the work.
As I mentioned, we've been doing this work for about 25 years, and we're not doing it alone. So we're trying to learn from people in the field, folks like you, other organizations, and from the research that's going on. And so we've identified over the last couple of years in particular, several things that PBL is really good at. And one of these things that PBL is really good at is this concept of launching inquiry. In one of our books, we try to talk about kids being lured to learning, meaning that, and I apologize for some of the breakovers in the text. There's some weirdness when we uploaded our font, so bear with us on that. Is this concept that a need to know in an entry event occur at the very beginning of a project, so that kids have a reason to master the content and develop the 21st century skills. And we think project-based learning in particular our model of it is very, very good at launching inquiry and creating these need to knows. The other thing that we think we're pretty good at it well is the conclusions of a project. And by that, we mean that students need to demonstrate their mastery of content and skills at the end of a project. So we think we have done a very good job, and we're not alone in this, at launching inquiry and creating a need to know, which improves engagement and rigor and all that kind of good stuff. And at the end of the project, be it 3 weeks or 4 weeks long or 2 weeks long, we've done a really good job of equipping teachers and students to demonstrate their mastery of understanding, creating real-world authentic products, hopefully presenting them to a real-world authentic audience. We're good at that. But there's some things we're not so good at. And so what we've come to understand over working with the Gates folks and examining the Literacy Design Collaborative, and by the way, I know I'm going to make a mistake on this today, is last night I have an 11-year-old son, and we were working on least common denominators. So I'm probably going to conflate LCD with LDC today, but I'm going to do my best not to do that. So how can PBL get better? In particular, our model of PBL is to focus on the middle of a project, and hopefully the slide's going to come up in a second. Is again, if you look at that little picture of cake and it's making me hungry, is we're good at the frosting, engaging kids in inquiry, launching the project, getting them started on a rigorous, relevant, engaging project. And we're really good at the bottom piece of chocolate, meaning how do kids demonstrate their understanding of significant content and demonstrate their skill development in 21st century skills. But we're not so good at the middle. We haven't scaffolded efficiently enough. And we think this is really, really where LDC comes into play, because it is the middle. It is a significant element in making PBL more rigorous, more relevant, and more focused on significant content. And so, Andrew, I lost my slide. Are we on 9? Okay, good. I hit the right button. Let's go to that one. Thank you. And this is our first attempt at making the middle of that cake more significant. Prior to what we learned about LDC is we have this document. You can download it from bie.org. It's called our Teaching and Learning Guide. People in our workshops or on our online platforms will design a project using our project overview form, which is available downloaded off the web. And we have a project calendar, which scaffolds out the day-to-day activities. And we intend this to be the middle of the cake, but we don't do a very good job of it. And now that we've encountered LDC, we think we can do a very good job of it. And so I'm going to pitch it back to Andrew, and Andrew's going to walk you through LDC. Any document that you see, like in this next slide that's going to come up, it's a picture of the LDC guidebook. We're going to give you, if you email me, david@bie.org or andrew@bie.org, we're going to post this document, but we're worried about the posting. We're going to give you all the links to these particular things. They're all for free. So we're going to break down a little bit about LDC now. Andrew will, and we're going to give you the link to this guidebook. So Andrew, take it away.
All righty. So I noticed that we already have some people here that are quite familiar with LDC, and we have some people that are not familiar with it, and that's what this is about. And I actually had the privilege. I'm actually here in Washington D.C. I got to spend the election night here in our nation's capital. It was quite exciting. But part of the reason I was here is that I was at an LDC summit. And so I had the ability to collaborate with a bunch of people who are already doing this LDC work. Not necessarily PBL and LDC, although there are some partners that may be doing it, but they're doing some really good LDC work. And what it is the Gates Foundation has worked with the Literacy Design Collaborative to create what I would call excellent scaffolded work on literacy skills linked to the Common Core. So what happens is in an LDC, what they're called are modules. And what happens is teachers create a module where students create a written product targeted to meet Common Core writing standards and engage in reading important texts. So the great thing that I heard this week and that I talk about when I talk about LDC is that it's a way to engage in reading to do great writing. And through it, it's not just the actual product of creating the written component, but it's also the scaffolding that goes along the way. And they call those mini tasks that you do. And good teachers do that, right? All the important literacy scaffolding that you do to make sure students can read better and write better and do all that good stuff. And here's the other important feature of LDC. You would think, well, this is literacy, right? So this is just in my English class. Not true. Actually, it is. Yes, you do it in the English class, but it's actually a literacy design piece that's used across the curriculum. Science class, CTE class, math class. Teachers are using LDC to do literacy across the curriculum and build those literacy skills. So let me talk about some really key features about this. It's anchored in the Common Core, in that when you design a LDC task, as it's called, you get these templates, and we're going to show some of those in a little bit here. They are targeted and they address very specific Common Core standards. And for us in the United States, it's coming down the line, and we've got very important standards that we need to make sure that we're addressing, and it gets students to do those and to scaffold the learning in those Common Core standards that again are very targeted, both the reading, writing, as well as the, you might call them, the literacy standards in the different content areas. So that's a really important key feature of the LDC work. And what it does is that it does a good job of unpacking. So it unpacks the literacy work into very specific tasks. It's not just a short thing. Oftentimes, when I design an LDC module myself, you literally backwards design, as we talk about that, very similar to our teaching and learning guide. You backwards design into very specific tasks that all students will do, variety of tasks that will help them write better, read better, to do things. So it unpacks the work, the literacy work that happens in the classroom, so that you as the teacher have very specific things to do in the classroom through your plan. So as I said, it's really anchored in the Common Core, and this is one of the graphics that's actually in the LDC, one of the major planning forms here. And as you can see, it focuses on the 3 modalities of writing in the Common Core. Anybody who's familiar with the Common Core, we understand that argumentation is a key writing part, informational or explanatory, and as well as narrative. And it also focuses on different thinking levels. And what you do is that you have students do a specific type of thinking task, such as defining a piece, analyzing, a cause and effect, all good thinking skills that happen in different content areas, and write a component that matches with that piece. So again, it's very targeted, and if you think about it, if students are doing this writing, they're going to do excellent on any of those Common Core assessments that are coming out, such as the Smarter Balanced Assessment. And again, the other feature is that it's really embedded into a text. Students must read something or multiple sources, whether those are informational, literary, whether it's a novel, a textbook, research on the web. They've got to read that stuff in order to perform on these different writing tasks. So again, I mentioned there are templates, right? It's so nice to not have to reinvent the wheel. When I designed my first LDC module, I was concerned about, well, where do I start? Well, LDC actually provides you with very specific templates that you can use to really target that teaching and instruction, and to build a module that targets specific writing modalities and Common Core standards that you need to hit. So you can really meet your students where they're at. You can target standards your students need, maybe some really specific work on. And I want to show you some of those templates now. So I know it may be a little hard to see. Some of us may, I'll be honest, I just got some glasses. I'm wearing glasses, so I'm looking at this stuff. And I'm gonna, as you can see, like here's some sample template tasks, all right? And I'm going to read it to you in case you can't see, but here in template task 1, and there's many of these template tasks that you can look at. It says after researching blank, and you get to fill that in, right? So in this case, it says after researching an informational text on, and again, the content is open, write an, essay, or you can substitute another writing component that argues a position of, and you insert that there, and then support your position with evidence and research. Be sure to acknowledge acknowledge competing views and give examples for past or current events. So again, this is an argumentation and analysis, and there are other template tasks that do different things, right? And so you'll notice that in just a couple of these examples, we've got a social studies example and a science example. It says, in this case, it says after researching academic articles on censorship, write an editorial that argues your position on the use of filters by schools. Or here in the science, after researching technical and academic articles, okay, on the use of pesticides in agriculture, write a speech that argues your position on the use of pesticides in managing crop production. So you'll see that these are very targeted writing tasks but that also have some space for you, the teachers, in terms of content and in terms of what you have students really create. So the template tasks are there for you. You just have to fill it in. And it does take some work to work it when you're designing these things. So what I really appreciate about this piece is that, as you already may have noticed, it's structured, but it's flexible. So you have these very specific template tasks that, has you really target through the template task, you're targeting very specific standards, and that really helps the work. But you'll notice that, wow, I could do this in any content area, or I could actually pick which template task I'd like to do, or I can pick which writing product I would like my students to do as well. So there's a lot of real space to meet the needs of students in terms of how they write, what they write, the content at which they're writing, what they're reading. So again, there's a lot of great open flexibility in that piece. And again, there's a really awesome possibility here for PBL. I'm sure that many of you know that one of the essential elements is voice and choice, right? And so what a great opportunity to have students create individual written products where they have maybe some voice and choice in what they're creating in those written products. You get to target the standards and content, but maybe you get to give them some voice and choice in the type of written modality they get to do. Maybe it's an article or a persuasive letter. We advocate for voice and choice because we know students can show knowledge in different ways, but at the same time, we have a very structured way of doing it because at the end of the day, we need students to meet the same standards, right? All students got to leave the project with the same learning. So again, there's a really great opportunity for a marriage between LDC and PBL in this structured yet flexible idea. So again, there's a bunch of these task charts that you can look at. Again, focus on the type of thinking skills that you're having students do, and the type of task they're doing. And the other thing I will mention is look over here. This is interesting. We already talked about driving questions. Some orgs call it the essential question. Well, guess what? There's a nice little marriage there. Oftentimes, you insert a question and then part of the template task. You'll see that right here, insert question. So there again, there's a really good marriage here to be able to create a great question that we can engage students and then have them do a great authentic written product. So again, notice that there's some flexibility, some structure, and again, a nice little marriage between not only flexibility and structure, but also the driving question or essential question, as you might call it. And again, the other thing I will notice here, look at these great thinking skills. So it's really focused on some meaty rigor here, right? We're not just doing remote recall, right? We're having deep thinking and good thinking skills, good critical thinking skills. So again, we talk about 21st century skills and critical thinking as an important essential element to a PBL project. Well, look at this. We're doing that right here with an LDC module. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, the integration of LDC and kind of how we do that component, because there might be some specific examples to do that. And for that, I'm going to actually turn that over to Dave to give a specific example about how he might actually integrate this LDC module, which I've given a quick overview for, into a sample project.
Thanks, Andrew. One of the things I want to mention is the fact that we've actually talked to the LDC folks and the Gates people, and one of the issues that we think is problematic with LDC is the engagement factor. And that's why we think the marriage of PBL and LDC is so effective, is because we think we're much better at engaging students in inquiry, doing rigorous work that's both authentic and relevant. And we think LDC is missing that. So that's why we think it's a perfect marriage. And so we're arguing that an LDC task or module should be embedded, an integral part of a project. So in the next slide, Andrew, can you advance it? The next slide, what I want to talk to you about is in our book from a couple of years ago called the Pbl Starter Kit, we used as a spotlight project this project that I had written for an 11th and 12th grade American History English 11 class. It was called the American Archetypes. And so all of the content for this particular project is on our website and in that book. And what I thought I would do when I went through the LDC workshop, I was in Washington, D.C. as well for this, but months ago, is that I would take a project that I was already doing that had literacy tasks, but these literacy tasks were not as rigorously aligned to standards, which were California standards at the time. And it was not as well scaffolded as I ever want, but I didn't have a format to use. And so I took this project, American Archetypes, and decided to take the literacy tasks that were inherent in this example and make it an LCD module out of it. I told you I would do that, an LDC module out of it. So this is a screenshot from the LDC module I wrote for my American Archetypes project. And I chose an argumentation analysis piece. The LDC stuff automatically pulls in the Common Core standards. And I'm going to use my little arrow and point to, oops, my arrow disappeared. Let me get it back. I'm going to drag it over here and point it at L3. And now what L3 means is as you design these literacy tasks, you can choose from 3 different levels. Level 1 being the lowest in terms of sophistication. It still hits the standards. Level 2 being the middle ground, of course, and level 3 being the highest one. And so you can vary the products and the rigor, the sophistication of the product. So if you have English language learners, or if you have students that are in primary or in K3, is you can finely tune the level of these works, the LDC modules that you're designing. You can see the teaching task, of course, the grade level, this one in particular was assigned to, was 11th grade. It was an integrated union between English and social studies. But my main topic was U.S. history, 11th grade, which in California is post 20th century, mainly 20th century U.S. history. So again, what we are trying to do here is take LDC, its focus on the Common Core, its templates, which are both flexible and scripted, and plug them into rigorous, relevant, authentic, engaging inquiry projects on our side. One thing I want to address, I'm going to pass it over to Andrew on this one, but I want to speak very briefly about what's going to happen. As you folks know, full implementation of Common Core, I think, is in 2015 in all 50 states or 47 states that have agreed to this. In January of 2013, which is just a few months away, PARC and Smarter Balance, which are the 2 multi-state consortium who are doing assessment, are going to start releasing their assessment items. We've been given a preview of some of those assessment items. Whereas in the past, most of the statewide assessments had somewhere between 90 and 95% of the items were simple recall. We have seen and been assured that up to 25% of the items on these new Common Core aligned assessments from PARC and Smarter Balance are not going to be based on simple recall. They are going to require kids to critically think, problem solve, and create solutions based on data to interpret all the higher level thinking skills. So that's another reason we like LDC, because we think these assessments, which are going to be nationally mandated state by state, are going to align to LDC, and project-based learning is the only effective way to call out that kind of work. Andrew, anything else on assessment?
Well, the other thing I would say is that when you're building these mini tasks out for, as you're doing the deeper design of it, you're also formatively assessing along the way. So it's really important that we know that. I mean, that's just good practice, and PBL really really champions that as well. It really, you want to make sure that your students are doing well along the project, learning important content. And when you do an LDC module, you're doing the same thing. You're making sure students are getting the writing and reading skills that they need to do these LDC writing tasks, as they're called. And so I think it's really excellent for that in terms of that project. And again, one of the other things that I want to point out here is that they actually provide the rubrics here. So, I got to tell you, rubrics are a beast, aren't they? I mean, they take a long time to really get a really good rubric. And so it's nice that they actually give you very specific rubrics aligned to the different teaching tasks, argumentation, narrative, so you can really, again, assess the learning targets associated with those writing tasks. So it's nice to be able to have those rubrics and the language there that you can use in terms of common language. So, and you'll notice that they even align within there, David pointed to L3, right? Well, look, here's L3 right in this development component, or L2. And, you choose, like you said, the level of depth and complexity of the writing task. You may or may not do an L2 or L3. It really depends. Now, of course, I might be speaking, as they say, speaking Greek in terms of that. But as you become more familiar with LDC, you'll understand that there's a lot of structure and flexibility to figure out what specific writing targets you're doing within the rubrics. And again, we see this as creating an authentic, engaging opportunity to learn these literacy skills, again, across the content area. And so again, down here, it even has this content understanding component. So it's very important that, yes, we have the important literacy skills, but you can be assessing content, and you might insert your own component there to your specific content area. But again, the writing task that they create should be on content that you, the teacher, decide, or that's in your content discipline area. So, the design process, again, is all, let me just kind of review how long does it take, what is it like, how long would it take within the context of a project? Well, a lot of these LDC tasks, they vary in terms of how long they might be, depending on the rigor and you might do. But as you notice, like it's the doing of the actual writing component, but it's also the formative work and the scaffolding that happens along the way. So I've seen some LDC modules that take a couple weeks, that take a week, but these again could be folded into a larger PBL project that you want. Let me think. I think David has something he wants to throw in here.
Yeah, Andrew, what I was going to suggest for the folks who were looking at this, the next slide, which we'll show, is focused on time. And by that, I want to put this in context. So our model of doing projects, our workshop is 3 days in a face-to-face model. And we think a teacher in those 3 days of work can do about 80% of all the work needed to design a project, including resources and rubrics and all that kind of good stuff. It might take them another 5 or 6 hours to gather research, all the other resources, and nail down every form and homework and all that kind of good stuff. So probably 30 hours to design, by our model, a rigorous, relevant, engaging, authentic project that's going to be the main course for 3 to 4 weeks of your instruction. When I went to Washington, D.C., I had that framework in mind when I sat down for the LDC workshop. And I don't know if it's because I had already designed a project and had envisioned plugging in my LDC task module into the existing project, but it only took me about an hour to actually write the LDC task. And this is partially why. I put a bunch of links up for you folks to look at. And when you start to look at the task templates, what you're going to realize is they look like closed sentences. That's closed as in C-L-O-Z-E. For those of you who remember Mad Libs, it's very similar to a Mad Lib. And by that is, it's a way in literacy to give students, especially English language learners or younger students, a sentence in which they plug in a verb or predicate, a subject, a noun, a preposition, or whatever. Well, the LDC templates have been designed exactly like that. I think that's why it only took me an hour to design the actual LDC module. So it's not really time consuming, and they keep putting up more and more templates. Andrew, I don't know how many there were when you, this week, But when I did it back in July, there were about 29 templates, and there are more and more being added all the time. So I would imagine there's more than those 29. But it is not a time-consuming task to do these. And because they do the rubrics, the assessments are fabulous. You can just download and plug and play those rubrics. It's pretty cool. Andrew?
Yeah, I agree 100% on this. You would think that it's a giant daunting task. And so there's a couple of things I would add. I would say, we know that it takes a long time to plan a PBL project in a sense, but the joy of it is you plan up front so that you can really get to that, teaching thing that you really want to do along the way of a project. And so I would say that now when you fold in an LDC module into it, it's actually taking away some of that planning time that you would spend on other parts of the project because now it's an important piece of the project. So it's not that it's PBL and the LDC over here on the side. It's that, oh, the LDC, just like our other content, is an important component of the PBL project. And so it's layered into that, what you might call that 30 or more planning time. And as David said, there's lots of templates to get some great ideas, and they're building more every day. And the other thing I would also mention is I think the time that it takes is just really mastering the writing of this and making sure it's picking the right template task for the right component. And then the other part to think about is the backwards design mini task component where you're really planning that out. But you can really draw on your own experience. And something that I saw this week that they're starting on is similar to the big library of literacy design templates. They're going to start building a library of mini tasks. So you can go to this library and go, okay, I need a mini task that works on, note taking, or I need to do a mini task that works on outlining or working on what we call the controlling idea in my writing. So you can really go and take a great small mini task or activity or formative assessment and just plug that into your module. So again, it's about saving time as you do this. And that was a really exciting thing for me to see, that this wasn't going to be an and, so to speak, but just just another part of my repertoire of teaching. And just like with our PBL projects, we were fine and we get better at them. And it's the same thing with our LDC modules. I'm sure that many of us who have done either an LDC module or project, sometimes you throw one away and sometimes you keep one and use it the next year. So again, when you're building your own capacity as a teacher to have these great modules and projects that work together. But of course, we're always improving our practice. So it's not as much of a time, worry as you might think. So I think I'm going to turn this to David. I think you have a talking point on this one.
Yeah, a couple things I want to mention is there's a company that the Gates Foundation has hired to create an online platform, Meta. Andrew, do you remember what they're called? Meta something. And I'm actually meeting with them because what I'm suggesting is that one is because we think LDC fits so well with PBL, and we think their online design platform is a fabulous tool for both people in just the pure PBL world and anybody who has to teach literacy, is that they make this open to the public. So when you go to the workshop, you actually get to work in this online environment that's fabulous. Everything's pulled down menus, and you click and ka-ching, and it prints a PDF and saves an electronic version of your project, which you can update at will. Phenomenal work. So we're hopeful that that's coming next year. In terms of actually scheduling a workshop, because I know everybody's going to ask, and people have asked me, is how do I go to an LDC workshop? Currently, unless the Gates folks are steering me wrong, is LDC work is being done virtually in every state in the union that's a Common Core state. And Gates people are giving away a lot of money for this. And so county offices of ed or REISs or educational service centers, some state departments like Kentucky, some very large scale districts are receiving Gate money, and Gates is sending their LCD trainers there to do workshops. The thing that Andrew and I have gone to was funded by Gates, and our organization got invited because they want fellow travelers to spread the word and understand the effectiveness of LDC. So I'm asking Gates again for more clarity on this. One is, how do people apply for grants in order to receive these workshops in their district, county, state, whatever? And if there are going to be some open model ones. If somebody knows of an open model one, I've not got clear language from Gates on that. Please post it in the chat window. So as we learn more, we will post more. We're actually thinking of having an LDC section on our website, so that potentially is coming. Andrew, I'm going to click on to the next slide because I want to save a little time for our questions at the end of it. We're refreshing to that image that we showed you at the beginning, filling the middle, because again, I want to restate that project-based learning is very good at doing a lot of good things. In particular, at the beginning of a project, launching an inquiry, engaging students, doing relevant work that's authentic. We're very good at having kids demonstrate publicly, hopefully before an authentic audience, that they have mastered the content that we want them to master, and that they have developed the 21st century skills that we want them to do. We're not so good in the middle. And again, we think LDC is the best thing that we've seen out there. With the links that I've sent out, is look at some of those LDC links, and you're going to find the rubrics, you're going to find the templates. And just for those of you who are thinking this is like writing across the curriculum, the Gates people insist it's not like reading and writing across the curriculum. They insist that they have flipped that model, which would have meant a science or math teacher or history teacher designing a project, a unit, a theme, a task, whatever, in their particular content area, and then trying to wedge in reading and writing activities for which they have no expertise, training, or desire to do effectively. The LDC people said this model is the complete opposite. You do not start with your content standards, being science, math, and all that kind of stuff. You start with the Common Core ELA standards and the tasks from the templates, and then build outward from that. From the task, you build a module that incorporates then your significant science content, your significant math content, history content, whatever. So they say it's a flip on the old, to repeat, they say it's a flip on the old reading and writing across the curriculum format. I'm going to show another couple of slides, and if we have time, this is the main link. I've already sent it out. This is the Gates funded site that includes all this. The screenshot down here, this is the document that I will post in email. Again, Adobe Connect, which is our platform, has a new way of posting files, and we're not smart enough to figure out how to do it effectively. So apologies for that. And then finally, where can you get some more resources? We are very active on Twitter, and that's the hashtag for it. We have a YouTube channel where this webinar is going to be archived, including all the other webinars that we've ever done for the last 2 years are archived. We're big advocates of the social platform. On Edmodo, there's 15,000 PBL people from around the world in our Edmodo community sharing resources that are staggeringly good. We have a mediocre Facebook page. So what I'd like to do now is Andrew posted our emails. They're very simple, david@bie.org, andrew@bie.org. But I would now like to either use the chat window and the Q&A window to answer questions for you folks, and we will stay on as long as there are questions. So please, fire away.
And as I see these questions coming in, I want to echo what David's saying. Yeah, unless I see that you're talking about it as well, the literacy across the curriculum. The difference here is that you're actually teaching and assessing these literary skills across the curriculum. You're not just doing them per se. You're actually targeting them, scaffolding them, and teaching and assessing them, which is, again, I think, a major shift in how we do literacy instruction. It's not just, it's siloed. We're doing it across. And so there's a lot of great opportunity. And actually, I do know of a possible open a place to do some LDC work. SREB, Southern Region Educational Board, I was talking to some of the colleagues here this week, and they do a conference or a get-together in July, and I think they're going to have it be an open thing. Again, for those people, I know we have some SREB people here. You might correct me if I'm wrong, but they mentioned that that is going to be an important part of the work there. And so there is an interesting possibility to maybe go there and do some work on LDC. Again, please correct me if I'm wrong. Do we have any major questions that are coming in?
Andrew, I want to play off of that. Yeah, the SREB folks, Leslie Carson's putting up a bunch of resources. They are wonderful. They're perfectly aligned with LDC and project-based learning. We've been friends with them for a long time. Andrew reminded me is next June 17th through 21, we have our PBL World Conference, which is in Napa, California. I'm going to put in the URL. We just have the splash page up. Registration opens on February 1st. And last year we sold out the entire conference 6 weeks in advance. So we're assuming the same thing will happen. Andrew, who's been on the webinar with me, is going to do a one-day advanced practice session on PBL and LDC at that conference.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to that again. And the idea being that we can really walk away, because what normally happens is some people come doing a PBL 101 workshop and then really want to kind of take it to that next step. And sometimes some people come to PBL World having already done a 101, and now they want to take it to the next step. And as we know, as more and more people are adopting LDC, I mean, lots of different schools, groups, and I met a bunch of of teachers in New York that were there, teachers in New Jersey, a bunch new tech schools is quickly adopting LDC. And so we really want to say, you know, we are model for PBLs. You can do it in any classroom, that content area that you choose. And so we see it as saying, you know what, now that you design a great PBL project, let's take it up a notch and really build literacy skills for all kids. So let's not just do the literacy skills, but let's engage them in the project where we can get the opportunity to do a really rigorous LDC module. So there's a great opportunity there for our kids.
What I'd like to do is, we're running out of time. We're at the end of our time together. Again, Andrew and I will stay on for a couple of more minutes to answer questions. For those of you who are going to log off, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. As you discover more resources about literacy, in particular LDC, please share them with us. Again, we're thinking of adding a section to our website specifically for LDC, and we want to improve our work by incorporating LDC. So we want to learn from you, and for you, as a matter of fact. So please, thank you for joining us today. Stay on and ask questions if you have them.
I see a couple questions. One coming from Peggy. Do you provide training resources for writing essential questions? Yes. I mean, you know, that's an important part of our wonderful PBL 101. And there are some resources on our website. You know, you go to the tools section and you can find some good resources there. There was a webinar recently, actually just on driving question, that was recorded. So please, what's that?
I'm going to put the link up for our driving question webinar.
Thank you so much. Yes. So again, go ahead. We love that. Go and read that. And I'll tell you, there are some blogs out there by some great people who have done some PBL work on driving questions. I will say hello to Charity Teresa. And there was another question around, it says, we have students been writing the literacy task into the student's opening document, right? The entry document. Do you think that's an appropriate place for them? Well, I think it's fine that if you're transparent about students about what they're going to do in that project. And if part of that is, again, the writing component, yes. You definitely, just like with good teaching, you make the expectations clear about what they're going to write about and what that will look like. And we do that in PBL. We want to make sure the expectations for the projects are completely upfront, so it creates, you know, the engagement and the need to go, oh, well, I need to know this content. So I think that that's a great way to do it. I see Leslie. Oh, no problem, Leslie, here to help.